modified. We're going to start at 7:25. Does anybody have to leave by 8:15? You can stay back? Okay. Okay, so we'll go. Oh, okay. So okay, so what we're going to try to do, we'll have to talk, and maybe after 45 minutes, we'll leave for Q&A. Okay? Yeah. Maybe at around 8:15.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you everyone for showing up. And I guess first, because I'm doing this for the first time, one of the lead hosts here, myself and Amelia. And if you have any questions at the end, please let us know. First off is Recycle. Welcome. Okay. So I'm going to tell what Startup Grind is. With over 2,500 members, we are now one of the leading startup event networks in Dubai. Startup Grind is a global startup community designed to educate, inspire, and connect entrepreneurs. We host monthly events, and actually in our case, in November, we'll be having 2. In December, also a couple more, okay? We host monthly events in more than 200 cities for a network of 400,000 entrepreneurs, featuring successful local founders, innovators, educators, and investors who share personal stories and lessons learned on the road to building great companies. Okay, so our monthly fireside chat, which is this. Interviews, startup mixers, annual conferences provide ample opportunities to connect the amazing startups and the people behind them. Okay, cool. So, I believe I've got to do a bio, but I'll skip that in the interest of time. I'm the lead host. My name is Freiha Siddiqui, and Amelia is right here, who's another lead host, and Andrea is our event host, coordinator. Welcome everyone. And before we begin the interview, I want to tell a little bit about Alyssa.
You're gonna read like an official bio.
Yeah, official bio right from your website. Alyssa, Freiha. Oh, you want to do that?
I'll just do it.
Okay.
I'd rather than the
Let's do
official
that.
bio.
Let's do
It
that,
just
yeah.
sounds so rigid, so I
Yeah, okay.
my name is Elissa Freiha. I'm born and raised in Paris, France, to a Lebanese Emirati father and an American mother. I graduated with a BA in Global Communications and then moved straight here to Dubai to launch WOMENA with my best friend from university at the time, Chantal. So I hope one day we'll meet her. That was about 3 years ago, 2013. We conceptualized Lumina in August. I moved here in October, and we officially launched on October 31st. We launched exactly a year later on November 1st, 2014. Since then, we've invested in 4 companies with another 2 in the pipeline, over almost 1.8 million dirhams funded. The network is primarily made up of female investors, so women that want to start investing in tech startups. We have a couple of gentlemen as part of the network as well. And we don't necessarily only fund women-run companies either, right? So our founders, male and female, it's all about equality and inclusion for us. So.
Excellent, thanks, Alyssa. Okay, so we'll get to the questions now. And basically, I mean, you might have seen some of these questions, but we'll try to see how we can make this more interesting. So, I mean, why did you choose Dubai? So you said you grew up in France?
In Paris,
yeah. Yeah, so why Dubai?
Well, my father has been based here my entire life, so I've been coming in and out of the country and the city for the past 26 years.
Sure.
We have a house here. I know I have a very solid network here as well, and my father is very active in the investment space here. I, at the time, didn't totally understand the difference between venture investing and, let's say, real estate, right, or brick and mortar businesses or hospitality investing. Mm-hmm. So I thought it would be much easier to come in and plug into that network straight away. On top of that, now, as you guys all see, there's no, in my opinion, there's no better ecosystem to get involved in when it comes to entrepreneurship in this day and age. The market is not saturated. You're able to get a lot of time and understanding to experiment, to figure out your product market fit, which you don't necessarily have in the United States. You are able to, meet a lot of people that otherwise you wouldn't otherwise meet.
Sure.
I think you get a lot of press and support in terms of PR very cheaply because there's nobody else. So we saw that it was really a hub for startups, and that there was a lack of connection between the startups and the investors, and a lack of education between them as well. So they didn't know how to meet each other, and then they didn't know how to trust each other, and which is a good startup to invest in, or which is a good investor to have on my board. So we thought we could bridge that gap.
So why choose estate sector and women? Why that?
So the women was actually it was a product of our experience here. When I moved here in November 2013, it took me about 6 weeks to realize that I was the only woman in the room at every single investor event.
It's getting better.
Hello, this is phenomenal. 3 years ago, I was the only woman, right? And you might have had somebody's, daughter or wife in the room that was just dragged there with her husband, and she didn't understand what was happening. All of the events were happening at Capital Club, so they were all quite corporate and closed and egotistical, and they weren't as relaxed as here. They weren't as inviting. So we quickly realized, we're the only women. Statistically, that's impossible. Where are the other women in this startup space? Let's have our network just target these women and find them for ourselves. So.
Do you find a lot of wealthy women here in this region?
You do. I mean, statistically, when we looked into it, it was a shocker that there were no women in this space.
Sure.
Because, what we saw was 22% of GCC wealth is owned by women. So it's actually their money, either inherited or they work for it. And then 85% of the purchasing decisions in the US, there wasn't a statistic for here, but 85% of all purchasing decisions are made by women. Right, so that's why they're so great at marketing. That's why they're.
And my wife makes mine for me.
It's true, right?
Sure,
the school, the insurance, and all that. The wife tends to make those decisions.
Sure.
Yet they're left out when you go further back in the pipeline.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Okay, so in your opinion, why do you see startups fail, and have you seen a lot of startups fail here in Dubai?
Yeah, and it's a bit heartbreaking, I think. Sure. I haven't been in the industry long enough to be jaded yet. So I'm still delusionally optimistic, like all startup founders. And what I've seen is, again, there is a bit more leeway to quote unquote fail, but still be around and still develop your product and still pivot and still grow. But I've seen, startups completely collapse because of something as simple as ego. They get greedy, or they get a lot of buzz, and they think they're amazing, and out of nowhere they double their valuation, and then they scare off all investors, or they sign a partnership with somebody without actually vetting that person properly, and not knowing that that person in this society has a bad reputation, so that can kill them as well. I've seen, well, not in 5, but I have seen maybe certain incubators or startup accelerators put in certain terms in term sheets very early on that the founders don't necessarily realize will hurt them in the subsequent rounds of funding. So technical issues as well.
Now, does everyone understand accelerators, all the buzzwords being thrown, just for, does everybody
don't
know?
be shy.
Okay. Yeah, okay, great, perfect. Okay, so, again, what resourcing connections did you leverage to be successful? Of course, your dad was here when you came back. I'm sure you were new, you didn't have friends. What was your starting point? How did you get started?
So actually, my father turned out to be not that big of a help at all. That was a complete misconception on my part as well.
Okay.
If anything, he spent the first year and a half of me working on this project telling me that, what the hell are you doing on your computer? And go work for the government. What are you doing? What is a website? What is this? And I don't know. So eventually, what we ended up doing was building our own network. We didn't get any connections from him. I had just a handful of friends that weren't even in this space. So we went to every event remotely related to this, right? Every conference or women in business event or women in business group or council or AmSham in Abu Dhabi and in Dubai, any startup conference, right? STEP and ArabNet and all these things. Every single one we could go to, we went to. And then we went through every magazine and newspaper that had any list of the top 10 companies or the top 10 VCs or the top 50 women, and we cold emailed all of them. There's a great add-on to Chrome if you guys go online called Reportive, and you can essentially hack to find anyone's email anywhere. So we would just find people's email, right? Like random.
Is it still active? Or?
It's still active. I mean,
or
it's fun. So you can find anybody's email online if you try hard enough, and they would think that we would have met them somewhere. Got their contact. They were really responsive.
Okay, great. Okay, so again, I want to understand, so once you started with that email list, okay, those are the first contacts you met, but did you go out and see them in person? How do you come up with the whole idea around WOMENA? okay, we're going to do this, we're going to open a VC. How do you come up with that idea? Was it something you were doing in France, or how did you import that idea?
No, not at all. To be honest, I used to be a baker in Paris. I used to make cakes and things. So I wasn't in this space at all, and I was actually moving to Dubai to open up a restaurant with another girl. And my co-founder was working with the New York Angels, Gust, which is an online venture capital deal flow manager, and Rose Tech Ventures, right? They're all under the same umbrella, and she was really in that space for about 3 years. So right before I moved here, I think she's phenomenally capable. She's one of the most intelligent people I've ever met in my life. And she was telling me about this angel investing thing. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever, right? And at the same time, I was obsessed with Shark Tank, like everybody else, and it was great. And I was like, wow, actually, all my friends that are opening restaurants and opening companies in Dubai are having so much trouble accessing capital. And all my friends that were investing were kind of haphazardly investing, when one random guy comes in and he's like, oh, I heard about this cool startup, and they're like, yeah, okay, I want to invest, here's money. They wouldn't do any sort of diligence or actually practical.
No structure.
There was no structure.
There's no structure in place.
So I was like, that could be a really cool idea. I think we could create something that structured it without a gender focus, right? But we just thought it was necessary. So we moved here, we had a completely different idea on what it was going to look like at the time and what we were going to do. And essentially, after we decided to target women, we saw an insanely high response. Once we launched a year later, and within that year, we actually realized that most other angel groups and VC funds even don't do the amount of work that we did. They don't do the amount of diligence. So most of the startups we were seeing were even asking us like, you're angels, why are you asking for my financials? Or what do you care who's on my cap table, right? Little basic questions that are totally normal, but for them in this region, angels hadn't been educated in that way yet. So, it started developing, and we said, okay, we want to service the whole pipeline. Investments used to take 6 to 11 months. One investment, and by that time, the founder is sick of the investor, and the investor doesn't care about the startup anymore, and all things were just falling through the pipeline. So we thought we'd streamline the whole thing, which we have now. For us, the whole process takes about 2 months, including all the legal paperwork and everything. We manage the whole thing in-house. And we do all the diligence and guide our investors and educate them on the process. So that really, that's how the idea has turned into what it is.
Okay, cool. Top 10 lessons learned from your experience. I think what people would be interested in is specifically in Dubai.
Yeah.
So it's not as easy, or it wasn't as easy. So your top lessons here.
Yeah. There's so many. Don't skimp on the essentials. Legal. Don't try to get cheap legal, because you get what you pay for. That's my number one. That's what I see with every startup I've spoken to, including us. We had to restructure at one point and move onshore. We were trying to be cheap at the beginning, and we used most of our initial internal, it wasn't external, but internal paperwork from Quora. You could find some, basic outlines in Quora. Which now is just a bit annoying because there's so many vague issues.
So what is Quora again?
So Quora is a website that allows you to ask questions and receive answers from top industry executives and people with very specified knowledge. They're very active, and it's actually a great place for a lot of resources if you're not sure on it. So we got a lot of our stuff from there. So don't skimp on the essentials. Be honest. So don't lie about how well your company is doing. Don't try to fluff the numbers. Don't try to hide the big and bad issues that are over your shoulder, because most of the time somebody will have a solution for you, and they're more than likely to help. Don't try to keep your company secret, because everyone's too busy to copy you. So chill out.
Sure.
Talk to everybody. Talk to everybody. Go to conferences. Stand up in the middle of the room. Ask openly about what your company does and what you need to know. What else? How many is that? That's 3.
That's 2.
Yeah, be honest, be open, pay for what you really need, right? The essentials.
Yeah. So when did your company start?
Don't be too competitive.
You started 2000 and...
we launched in 2014.
2014. Okay, so
almost 2 years ago.
So in 2 years, so in the first year, any mistakes? Regrets? You could have done something better.
In the first year, a lot of mistakes, I think we were bootstrapping. So we tried to not hire as much help as we needed early on when we needed a lot more help, which meant that we were overloaded. We tried to take on a few issues that would have been best to be outsourced, for example. Longer proposals and things that I hated to do. Chantal thought she could do, realized she hated doing as well. They just kind of they sat there. And we lost on a lot of opportunities in the first year because neither one of us was inspired by the work that we had to do behind it. Now we hired somebody who does that, who loves doing that, and has gotten us, 4 or 5 times further because of it.
You mentioned about Gust, right?
Yeah.
So can you tell a little bit more about Gust and how did having somebody from the industry would have helped women?
Yeah, so one of the things when I talk about being open and trying to get as much help as possible is really, you will find advisors. You don't have to give them equity, you don't have to necessarily give them money. So many people, especially in this space, are really open to collaborating. Completely. So all of our advisors don't have equity. We offered them equity. They said, don't worry about it. You guys need the equity. Keep it for you guys. Keep it for rounds of funding that you're going to raise. We're just here to help. And they have been so helpful. So Gust was our platform for a long time. We realized it was a lot harder to get people here to start using it. But what it is like ProSeeder is another one. It allows for venture capital firms and angel groups to manage their deal flow. And it's a forum. We talk about each deal and share some information. We could upload a video of the pitch or the pitch deck. And then people can have discussions through it. But basically the founder of the New York Angels, David Rose, and subsequently Gust, was one of our first backers. I mean, blindly supportive of women in business, blindly supportive of the Middle East and emerging market investment. And he has connected us with anybody at any time, anywhere, right? Osama Hassanin is another one. Phenomenal Egyptian, but living in San Francisco. He's been a venture capitalist for 30 years, invested in God knows how many unicorns, which is statistically strange. And Antoon Karam, Sami Khoueibi, who's local, he started Enviromina, which is the leading solar power installer leader in the region. They're going to be doing very exciting things in the next year as well.
Okay.
So people that basically complemented every skill set that we needed.
Cool, very good. I guess takeaway wise is somebody's just starting out. What would be the first step they'll take if they want to approach you guys? What would they have to do? If they have an idea, great idea, but need funding. So what's the first step when they come to you guys?
Well, for us, we don't fund ideas.
Okay.
I support ideas, right? Good for you. I'll give you some advice and happy to sit down or connect you with somebody who might be able to give you more information.
Sure.
But at least in order to come to WOMENA, you have to have something developed. Whether it's a prototype or some sort of proof of concept, if you don't have, let's say, websites, or proof of concept that people are intending to buy your product if it's developed, some sort of traction already. So maybe you've been around for a year and a half or 2 years or 3 years, and you just want to take it to the next step. So we come anytime you're raising between $150,000 to like $1 million.
Just before you came here, I was talking to Victoria here, and I said, okay, it seems like it's not as easy to start up a business, right? All this, if you go out, okay, you pick up golf news, for example, on Friday, and you see, I'll start a business, start all of these ads, right? So it's always confusing, especially for somebody who's from outside, and may not understand the legal framework in general. So again, coming back to legal,
don't skip.
how do you understand that? I mean, because I find it really risky. If I were to, put in my life savings towards a venture, I love, but maybe there's some loopholes I just do not know about. How can all of these guys make sure, that doesn't happen?
It's not even loopholes. It's sometimes people will give you advice, which happen to us. People that we trust that have started multiple companies here, that have a lot of experience and want to support us, just gave us the wrong advice for us because they were not lawyers. And when we spoke to a lot of lawyers, they wanted to charge us like $50,000 to $100,000 just for that advice. And we were like, forget it. So we didn't even ask any lawyers that were in the middle range. We just said, you've done it before. What do you tell me to do? The mistake for us was we ended up registering in a free zone company.
Okay.
We did not need to register in a free zone company.
Explain that. What's the difference?
So there's 2 types of companies, right? You have onshore,
Okay.
Most onshore companies currently require Emirati local to own at least 51%
Got it.
of the business. A lot of people shy away from that because they don't want part of their business to belong to somebody who's not necessarily already a co-founder. But there are other legal ways of getting around that. So an Emirati can own 51% of the business, and the 49% is owned by you as an entity offshore. That entity has an agreement that basically states that you will share whatever revenue comes. You don't have to give away the revenue. There are legal ways of dealing with that. That doesn't mean it's the right way for everybody. It was just that ended up being the best way for us to be registered. We were told initially to go to a free zone because free zone is supposed to be faster, cheaper, more efficient. If we wanted visas, they took care of it, etc. We went to a free zone, and it took us like 11 months. And they changed our relationship manager 4 times without telling us, and weren't answering our emails, and tried to put our office in outsourced city, and tried to do this, and overcharged us, and then undercharged us, and then lost our deposit, and all of these things. It just wasted so much time. So it really depends what's right. Make sure there's a lot of new things that are starting now, like Astrolabs. Have you guys heard of Astrolabs? It's an incubation acceleration space sponsored by Google in I think Jumeirah Lake Towers in JLT, and they have cheaper licenses specifically for tech companies.
Oh,
so if you have a tech company, it might be easier for you to register with them. Sometimes some universities have incubators that aren't exclusively for students. Those incubators also have cheaper startup licenses available. We did not know this. It's not written anywhere. It's very difficult to find. We tried to track all the steps that we did so we could write a blog post and help somebody else. We got lost in our own madness at some point as well. But get a really good lawyer. And that will save you so much hassle, so much money. Make sure you have the right licenses, right? And you're in the right free zone. Every free zone has a little loophole as well. There's one, which is legally, you're not allowed to work or do business with any entity outside of that free zone.
Oh, okay, really? Okay.
Which doesn't make sense, and everybody works with everybody, but if they ever wanted to enforce it, you're screwed. So make sure compliance and legal and the paperwork is all taken care of.
Right. So now, Alyssa, what background did you come from? If you go back to school, at a university or high school or internet, what did you do?
Oh, if I psychologically go back to school, not if I.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not good.
Never again.
Interests?
Yeah. So, and so what did you take in school? What was your?
I took every marketing, communication, PR, advertising class that was offered in my school. I actually did. I took every single one. I had too many credits in that space, and I did a specialization in political communications.
Okay.
So I did anything that had to do with policy, international relations.
Okay. Everyone's been talking a lot about, hey, do you need an MBA to be starting a business? I mean, should I be going back to school and then pay off that $100,000 loan and then go back and start a business? Your recommendations, your viewpoints on that?
That's very personal, so I don't want to guide anybody in the wrong way, but I think what's more valuable, if you know where you want to go, then the most important thing in modern day, in the modern day for startups and for growing your business quickly is being able to be flexible and innovative. And most of the time, if you end up going to an MBA, and then most people on MBAs will tend to go into consultancy, and then if you go to consultancy, you might do a couple internships in a more corporate space. That tends to inevitably put you in some sort of structure. It took me a while. I needed that structure to be able to be disciplined in my work. But had I done it in that space, I wouldn't have been as open to ridiculous ideas. And that's what Dubai is all about.
Yeah.
They're the kind of people who will go,
greatest, craziest.
Yeah, they go, I want this here. Well, we can't do that. Why? If you don't do it, I'll find somebody else. Right? That's the biggest question in Dubai is why or why not.
Awesome.
They'll do whatever they want.
Great. Okay, so you mentioned bootstrapping. So initially you bootstrapped. Now your opinion on incubators, can we find a lot of them here in Dubai, accelerators, VCs, specific angel investors? What route and what's the availability of that here in our city?
Right. Okay, so I'm going to hit each target.
Sure.
So the first one, let's say incubators and accelerators. Those terms are almost interchangeable, depending on whether the incubator actually offers mentorship of any kind, right? So either it just incubates you, you can just be there and work. It's a co-working space of sorts, or they might have some acceleration program as part of it, acceleration, legal work or mentors, that kind of thing. There are a lot, more and more every year. It's very exciting. People can make money doing it. So you're seeing a lot of people prefer to go down that route. There's a real estate play into it. Like if you own this villa or if you rent this villa, the value of it goes up, the value of your company therefore goes up. You can charge more for the people in your incubator. You get equity early on. A lot of incubators either charge the entrepreneurs straight up or they get equity at a very, very low cost, right? Because your company is worth virtually nothing or very little. So if they own equity or they make a $10,000 or $30,000 investment in your business, by the time it gets to an angel, it's already double or triple the value. So it's very profitable. That does not mean that every incubator is good. I will not openly say if there are any that are not good, but I'll name a bunch of them that exist. So you have In5, you have Turn 8, and the Crib, also in Dubai. You have a new incubator in Dubai Silicon Oasis, that's co-owned with GE, Emirates, and Etisalat. That's mostly looking at tourism and hospitality startups that would get in that space. Some of them have weird, such as like you have to have one Emirati maybe on your team, on your founding team, and that's just to get more people involved. There's Flat 6 Labs in Abu Dhabi. There's what else? There's an incubator in Khalifa University that's mostly for hardware technologies as well. So you can look at those, you can see if that's right for you. They offer cheap co-working spaces. It's cool to be around other startups and people struggling just like you are. They might have an agreement for cheaper legal or cheaper media, or there's somebody that does that in the space. So those are the benefits. That might be right for your company, otherwise it might not. Then once you get past that stage, and most of the angel groups are connected to the incubators as well, you're going to need funding. Right? You've been funding it enough for yourself, you need your second round, you need a big push. That's where you're going to come to angels more than VCs. So angel investing groups here, there's WOMENA, there's Venturesuk, if you've heard of that. There is the Women Angel Investors Network, which only invested a company with at least one female founder. Venturesuk and WOMENA will invest in any business. And Arzon Capital. And there's a lot of VCs that kind of will look into a seed deal if it's really, really exciting. But pretty much that's it. Yeah. Right? You can look at Cairo Angels. A lot of our angel investment firms invest across borders. There's Cairo Angels, there's Tenmu in Bahrain, there's Alcal in Saudi Arabia. But essentially what you want, you come to us for mentorship. Angels are not just there for money, right? We're there to actually help you. We're there to help you grow. We have a network of 37 now signed investors, and a wider network of about 800 women purely into collaborating and mentoring our startups. And then we have an even wider network of 3,000 individuals in the ecosystem space in the Middle East alone. That doesn't include the global ones. This is just WOMENA, right? So I'm sure Venturesuk have their own networks, the Women Angel Investors Network have their own networks, Cairo Angels have their own networks. But that's where you get. You're coming for us, you're getting a group of people that are gonna invest under one name, so it doesn't clutter up your shareholder, your cap table. And they're here to help you. You wanna go into Saudi Arabia, you might have an angel that is Saudi and has great networks that help you go into that. My knowledge base is marketing and PR. So all of the companies that we work with, I help them in their communications and their marketing development. Most of them are techies, so most of them don't understand or don't care or don't know the value or don't know how to start with marketing. So that's where I don't know.
No, also most of the companies you've invested in, do they come from the tech space?
Yeah, all of them.
All of them, okay.
Personally and within WOMENA.
Okay, and you mentioned 4 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, very cool.
And there's 2 more in the pipeline, also all.
Okay, very fantastic, okay. Balancing family and business. So, I mean, of course, when you're at a new startup, you're pretty busy, you're running around.
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
Luckily, I'm 26, and I only recently got a boyfriend like a year ago, so once everything stabilized. So basically, that whole work-life balance thing is an entrepreneur-wide thing. It's not a gender thing at all. It's just impossible to figure out how to eat and eat well, or eat at all, or go to the gym, sleep. see your family, see your friends, get work done, go to the conferences, travel if you need to. It's impossible to balance all of it. So the rule I followed in the first year and a half was health was number one, because I saw it drastically declining. And health means mental health and physical health, right? 30% of all entrepreneurs go through depression, and another 15% will go through some sort of like other mental crash. I'm not even joking. These are actually, I mean, this is
psychological challenges.
This is psychological challenges, and entrepreneurship's not for everybody. This is why it's great to have a co-founder, or it's great to be in a co-working space, or it's great to just talk to other people, because you realize that everything you're going through, everyone else is
completely normal.
So honestly, just make sure that you're healthy. You do whatever you need to do to be. I realize I need to paint my furniture and my walls every once in a while, because I'm not that creative. When I do that, de-stresses. And I need sleep. So I prioritize those things. My friends and my family kind of, you're juggling, you're still figuring it out.
Right. So you talked about having the correct co-founder, right? So everyone's talking about making the other right team. The first thing every time I start out, does this guy, girl really have the same vision as I do? How do you go about really choosing this is the right person to be the co-founder?
For me,
how do you, let's talk about Chantal.
Chantal's like my soulmate. I'm not even joking. There's no question. I thought she was going to be so successful in her life, whatever she did. She felt the same way about me, and we're just going, they're amazing. Okay, we should do it together. That's great. So we did, and 3 years later we have this WOMENA baby together. But essentially, when people say it's like you're getting married, it's not even. It's so true, right? It's so real. So you do need a co-founder most of the time. Not some people are meant to be alone, but you need a co-founder most of the time. Honestly, again, you talk about it, right? Talk about it in forums, talk about it at conferences, you talk about it at dinner, talk about it at the coffee shop, talk about it loudly. Maybe there's somebody next to you who goes, did I just hear you saying you're trying to do a widget for hotel bookings? I'm doing the same thing. No way. Oh my God, we should do it. How far are you? Oh my God, this is and that's just how it naturally forms, right? Maybe it started grind right next to you is your future co-founder. There's also a website called Co-Founder Dating if you're more of a Tinder type, but those are ways.
Great. Whatever you choose to share, what do you want to share with the audience? And any advice? Let's go back to advice. Be more. So I won't give you 10. I'll give you 2.
Yeah, so 10 is a lot. You guys need to cut them. Especially for people who talk as much as me. Honestly, I think you're more valuable than you realize. So there's a lot of self-doubt that comes with starting a company, and a lot of self-doubt in life in general. Every single person has contacts, experiences, their own opportunities, thoughts, and unique experiences that they can share with somebody else. So don't really doubt yourself that hard. And then if you're thinking about starting a business and you haven't yet started a business, just do it. Like I got asked so often when I was just starting out, like, you're an entrepreneur, you're doing it, and I didn't understand what that meant. Like I'm thinking of starting. No, it's just I was just writing down my thoughts one day, and then I realized, okay, I need to actually register the business, and then one step leads to another, leads to another. You just do it. You don't have to think about it and what this means and how big it is.
Just do it.
Nike.
Yeah, Nike. So, what's been the hardest day for your company? So,
the hardest day.
Hardest day, and why?
The hardest day probably came when there's so many literally there's so many really annoying days. But for the first 2 years, Chantal and I were living together with another girl in a house in Abu Dhabi. So not only were we commuting, but you're living together, we're sharing a car, because you're saving on budget, you just want to make sure that this idea works. Yeah. You're meeting with the top women in the country, and then you're coming back to your little, being yourselves. And I think after 2 years of living with my co-founder and working with my co-founder, and us changing and our ideas changing, the hardest thing was essentially to really come to terms with what we had achieved, because you feel like we're not going anywhere, and it's been 2 years and nothing has happened, and there hasn't been anything. Then you sit down and you go, actually, no, this much has happened. 6 months, and we probably took a good month and a half off from each other.
From each other.
From each other. She was working, I mean, she's still working, but from
Okay.
San Francisco.
Okay.
I was working in New York.
Okay.
I grew my networks, my venture networks in New York. She grew hers in San Francisco, and it hit us when we were explaining to other people what we'd actually done and how different it was than from what other people had created there, because it's a very unique solution to Dubai and the Dubai problem, the Dubai people, things that they had never expected. And you guys know how hard it is building a business here, let alone functioning in this society sometimes. So us being able to overcome certain challenges here that they have to overcome there is actually much more difficult, and it makes us a lot more resilient.
I like this one. So, do you genuinely believe that Dubai startups are original? You know, or do you think a lot of them are imports? Okay, something you saw in Silicon Valley and said, okay, we're going to import this idea. Or are some? I mean, yeah, there's definitely going to be some of them, right? But are there really unique ideas that have just come out of Dubai?
Yeah, completely. I think let me think. 2 of the companies that we've invested in so far are completely unique ideas that were started and launched in Dubai.
Okay.
2 of them are copycat ideas.
Sure.
That's just how we are. Dubai used to be purely development and franchising and copy and pasting, and now you're seeing more and more really innovative entrepreneurs, and this I believe 150%. You are going to get the most innovative entrepreneurs coming from the Middle East globally in the next 5 to 10 years, because
Why do you say that, Alyssa?
we have to go through so much struggle, right?
Yeah,
you
okay,
have
but you have-
entrepreneurs. Yeah. I mean, in the States, they're trying to solve problems like how can I get organic chef-made food at your door in less than 10 minutes,
Yeah.
right? In Lebanon, they're trying to deal with cybersecurity while they have 8 power cuts a day.
Yeah.
Or they're trying to deal with analysis of language when there's 30 different dialects and creating Arabic content in a place that keeps getting bombed constantly. So those solutions are going to last a lot longer. They're going to serve a lot more people. They're going to scale much faster. And those entrepreneurs are going to be a lot more resilient to the entrepreneurial issues, right? You want to talk about mental issues?
Yeah.
You have to deal with people bombing your town constantly, or like you're building your company, I don't know where.
Yeah.
And you don't have power, and you don't have internet, or your internet speed is 13 Mbps, and you're trying, or in Dubai where it's like a fortune for 50 Mbps. It's all very expensive for tech companies to do, so they have to go to places where it's a lot cheaper.
Yeah, definitely. There was a place, the best thing I liked in Beirut last week was the baklava.
Yeah, the baklava is great.
Yeah,
the
it's
dish is
great, yeah.
There's
Yeah.
the first Lebanese startup to ever pitch at the Battlefield at TechCrunch Disrupt was just last week. They're a company called Nike.
Okay.
They do all cybersecurity. They have a female founder too.
Fantastic.
But it's phenomenal what they've come up with in the situation that they've been in. For the past
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
3 years.
It's great. With all the capital available in Dubai,
Mm-hmm.
why is it so tough to launch a VC? Of course, we talked about illegal. What else? Why does it make it so tough? People are against ideas. People don't like investing. Why is
To
it so
launch a
tough?
VC or to get money from a VC?
So, why is it tough to launch a VC firm here or have a strong investment network for startups?
Trust, I think, number
Yeah.
one. We're a anecdotal society. We don't work with facts very well. We work with trust and relationships, and it's blind trust. And 3 hours of meetings, just having coffee, and for like 5 weeks, and then they go, okay, here's $2 million. Leap Ventures has been trying to raise $50 million. $50 million, which in the US is peanuts. They've been trying to raise it for 2.5 years, and they have phenomenal tech backgrounds. I mean, honestly, they're a great group of individuals, 4 of them, and they just can't do it. So you need a lot of time, a lot of money
Yeah.
to get money, right? A lot of patience. But what's great about it is international VCs also can't raise here. So we're actually better suited to raise money in this region than people who aren't based here, because they'll come in from the States like, here's my portfolio, here are the returns, here's what we do, straight away. When, the old Arab with money just wants to sit and talk about politics for 3 hours.
Sure.
And did you see the new movie? I don't know. And they don't understand that anywhere else. So we're actually better suited to raise it here, but
Okay.
trust and time are really big factor.
Okay, great. Okay, what strategy did you use to scale your company? So you said 4 already, right? 4 and
Yeah.
2 more coming this
Yeah.
year. So okay, what's the plans in the next couple of years?
So essentially, we just want to make more investments. We want our investor base is growing. The amount of investments we're making is growing. The amount of startups we see and the quality that we see is also growing.
Yeah.
But what we want to do is get our investors to confidently start investing. So what we've seen is, yeah, there's a lot of people with money, and there's a lot of people that kind of want to invest that money. But when you're investing in startups, patient capital, where you're not going to see your money back, if at all, for 5 to 10 years, they're not really like jumping into that. You know, it's not like a very attractive thing for them. So it takes a lot of education. They need success stories, right? And I think for us, really giving our network and the region and the country those success stories from investors and from the startup point of view is really what we're going to focus on. We have a lot of education going on now. We're partnering with universities like Zayed University and the Higher College of Technology to even work on the graduate and undergraduate level, because they're all learning about entrepreneurship, but they don't understand what it actually takes to get funding. Or most of them are not going to be entrepreneurs, right? If they work in the public sector, they're still going to make money, and we want that money to be invested in the startups and in the entrepreneurs. So they have to have that in their minds already at the ages of 21 and 22.
Great. Excellent. Okay, so I think we're almost done with as far as time is concerned. Any questions? We're ready for questions. Slava.
Alyssa, thank you very much for such an interesting speech. I just have one question. What is the main difference between angels investing and venture capitalists? I think it's just a scale.
It's mostly scale, and depending on the VC firm, the involvement. So VCs, because they're coming in later, might get a board seat. They need a board seat. They need a board seat with voting rights, etc. Angels, earlier on, don't require that straight away. We're just here to help. The only VC I know of that is really active in mentoring and helping your startups grow is Beko Capital. And they might do a couple seed stage, but they're developing actual sections inside your company that are going to help startups with the biggest issues that startups are facing, which is hiring and sales, marketing. It's really the mentorship.
Thank you.
Regarding women investors, how they are different from male investors or venture capital? So how they are different when they are investing in a company? Do you have any experience with that?
Yeah, that's all the experience.
They're smarter,
I got.
right?
No, it's not smarter. Women tend to be more detail oriented. So they will read every word in our diligence reports. What does this mean? How does this function? Right? They want to understand everything behind your business, and so that they know, okay, this is what their problem and how they function. Male investors tend to be already more confident in investing, so they're not going to bother reading though. They're going to read the cliff notes. They're going to skim through a lot of it. They'll assess your company, and then if it's good enough, they'll go ahead and they'll diversify much better. So male investors might invest more frequently, but women, statistically, tend to make better investments because they do more diligence, they take more time, they really care about the people development of the individuals running those businesses. So you actually, and by having, so you're a better team when they do make the investment. And if you have a woman involved on a higher level, so maybe you just really like this person, you want to give them a board seat. Or they like you so much, they're going to give you so much funding, they deserve a board seat, right? Having a woman on that high level in your business can increase your returns significantly. Anywhere between 52 to 63%. I mean, that's like, because there's no diversity, right? One of our startups, when they came to us, everyone on the team was male, everyone on their board was male. They didn't even notice it. And now, all of a sudden, they have an access to phenomenally educated, experienced women in tech, in marketing. One of the board members is now a female, and then they've brought in 2 or 3 people on the executive team. But that diversity really helps the conversation. People just view things in a different way, especially since women tend to be the consumers of your products, right? And women are the ones that are making decisions, so you're actually understanding what the consumers are going to want before you get down to that stage.
Yeah.
You said you launched in 2013. And
14. We launched officially in 2014.
So then you made 4 investments.
Mhm.
So in which time frame did you make those 4 investments?
So we launched November 1st. Our first pitch event was December 2014. So we can essentially say, let's say everything really kicked off in January 2015. From January 2015 to 2016, in 1 year, we made 2 investments. We saw about 700 companies. Those 700 were funneled down to 20 companies. Of those 20 companies, we invested in 10%. We invested in 2 deals. We almost invested in 4 or 5, and then something happened within the pipeline on the entrepreneur's part or on the investor's part, nightmares, that didn't make it happen. From 2016, which January until now, we invested in 2 deals. And we have another 2 in the pipeline, so inshallah, I'm hoping to close those anyway by the end of the month. And we've seen only 16 of the 20 companies for the year that we have outlined.
And in which stage were they, those companies that you've invested in? Prototype?
So they're,
Traction?
sorry, I just want to make sure that none of them are there. So they're all software businesses. So we don't have any hardware prototyping, but Wrap Up, which is the 3rd portfolio company we invested in, essentially was in a beta testing stage. It just launched their beta. Alum Health has a hardware, but they didn't have hardware at the time. They were just looking to develop it. Mel2 had just launched when we invested in Mel2, and Office Rock had been around for 2 to 3 years before as an offline business, and then was moving into online, and their sales they had just opened their website, and in 3 months their sales went through the roof. So it's really diverse, but we try to look at seed stage. We tend to invest on convertible notes as well. So a convertible note is essentially debt investing that gets converted into equity at the next round of funding when the VC comes in.
Cool.
You mentioned something about advisory, so you also do advisory at the same time.
Yeah.
Do you do advisory for people that you're interested in, or general?
So for the companies we've invested in,
No, I mean, like, for example, if we come to you, do you have to be interested in the actual business first to advise, or you just advise in general?
so if you, for example, will send us your pitch deck immediately, we'll receive it. I'm not the one that goes through most of our initial pitch decks. It's Chantal and our analyst, Nermeen. So they'll look through it and they'll tell you as fast as they can, yes or no. If they tell you no, they'll give you a reason, right? It won't be that detailed. They'll tell you no. If you want to understand more, it's all up to you guys, right? So reach out, say, do you mind if we have a phone call? I just want to understand a little bit more how I can do better, or what was wrong with my deck, or is my product not good enough? And we're as transparent as possible because that's kind of our belief system. So that's the amount of advising that we'll do. If a company gets selected to pitch to our investors, we put them through a bit of diligence beforehand, so a lot of questions and structuring and prepping them psychologically for that kind of presentation. And then we sit down with them for about an hour and a half, walking them through the presentation, how to communicate this best to your investors, how to have the best pitch possible. And then if they get investment, then anything they want, they can reach out to us and reach into as far networks as we can to help you guys, even if it's funding later on.
Great. Anyone else?
Just as an entrepreneur, how do you keep yourself motivated and inspired and keep going?
It really helps to have a co-founder, because she's gone through the same journey that I've gone through. I think realizing, for me, there's no other path. For me, since I was like 10, I was gonna have my own business, and there wasn't even a doubt in my mind. And I know that I could get a job somewhere else, and I know that I have skills that I can do that. But this is my path. And so when I really lose motivation, there isn't a doubt of I shouldn't be an entrepreneur. There's more of a doubt of how is this business not working? What are the problems I need to solve? God, I can't believe these people led us on a 7-month goose chase and then just stopped answering emails or didn't, pay off, because that's the reality of it here. I just hang out with my good friends and
The positive ones.
the positive ones. My roommate now is a chef, so she cooks all the time. Paint some walls. Come hang out. You know what? Come hang out at a WOMENA event and you can talk to a lot of really motivated.
So when's the next one coming up?
The 28th of September.
And she's also speaking tomorrow, I believe, or tomorrow's the Innovation Summit. Well, I saw it on your website, or maybe you're just part of it.
I think we're just supporting.
Yeah,
I was
part
like,
of
I'm
it,
not
okay.
gonna
Oh, you're not speaking, okay.
I don't think I'm speaking anymore.
Okay,
wrong.
okay, alright. The lady right here, you have a question?
I was curious, how do you, like, why should an investor choose you? How do you ensure your due diligence is the right one?
So again, this is choosing the right investor for you. So do your research on who you want to get funding from. What other companies have they invested in? Have they invested in companies similar to you?
An investor comes to you and
Oh.
says, here's my money,
Oh, okay.
tell me which one is the good option.
Okay.
So how do you ensure them, yes, we are the right person that you should go through? How do you ensure that your due diligence is the
It's
right one?
successful. So essentially, before they sign to WOMENA, we have one redacted due diligence report, which is this, and a real life kind of censored example of what we produce. So they see 15 to 25 pages of real diligence that we will do on every company that ends up going for funding. We facilitate it as much as possible. They have, with testimonials, they can speak directly to our investors. If anyone is interested in being an investor, you're welcome to come to our event on the 28th. So they attend an event usually before signing on and see the quality of the network and can talk with other people. And then hopefully just sitting down with us can reassure them that, that we're the right people for them to join. We are still a young company, so it's not like we have an insane exit yet in our books, but we have 4 companies. 2 of them are going for their Series A funding and are getting funded, and the investors are reinvesting for the next round, which is really exciting. One of them is going on at 3 times the valuation that we invested in a year ago. The other one is at 3 to 4 times, still to be determined. So you see that kind of attraction. Your money is worth 3 to 4 times what it was last year, but it's still intangible, so trust us that it will do well later.
Hello.
So my question is yes. Instead of saying it's me, hi. So my question is, what is the scenario like for women and entrepreneurs in the tech industry in Middle East? Because usually women in the tech industry not commonly seen, and again approaching a venture capitalist or an angel investor, being a woman in the tech industry, how are we perceived, or what is the entire scenario like for women in the tech industry?
So actually there's statistics that can support it now. Since 2013, ArabNet's been tracking gender and entrepreneurship in tech. And what's crazy is you're better suited to be a female in technology in the UAE than you are in the US. About 25% of all technology startups have a female founder in the UAE, and last year 12% of all the venture-backed ones had a female founder. In the States, in the same stage, only 7% had a female founder. So we actually almost doubled that in terms of your ability to get funded. And that's because there's such a low amount, right? There aren't enough startups. So the good ones really get noticed, and people don't care whether you're a male or a female, they kind of want to jump onto it. There's still a bit of a subconscious bias, and in that case, I think just try to prove yourself as much as you can, and maybe come to a network like WOMENA or like WANE, Women's Angel Investors Network, to give you some clout, because we have investor groups that don't do diligence, but are like, if WOMENA's investing, we'll join in on you guys. So you're more likely to, 50% of all the companies that pitch to our investors have a female founder.
Fantastic. Follow-up to the computer science graduate, hence the women in tech question.
Yeah, cool.
Anybody else? I saw a hand over there.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah. My question is about e-commerce. The most successful startups over here
E-commerce.
are e-commerce. But right now, it's not, people are not interested in e-commerce. That's per my understanding from investments point of view. Is that true, or what's the reason
I'm
for
completely
it?
going to disagree.
Okay.
Completely. And so much so, I think Hamad Al Abar just launched a VC that's specifically targeting e-commerce startups, and it's one of the largest funds available. So people are aware of it, and they are backing it like crazy. Like that is the next, for what I understand, that is the next big boom, because we're such a commodity-focused culture here. Everyone is trying to understand e-commerce startups and which startups can do it the best. You are hard-pressed to be able to overcome a lot of the challenges here, right? Cash on delivery, and then they order something and they realize they don't want half of it when it gets to their door, and how are you going to deliver it, because Aramex isn't going to just take it back, and it's very difficult. So I think if you get the right people who've done it before, who've failed in that space and who've succeeded in that space, I think you're going to see a lot more interest in e-commerce very soon.
And at what point, sorry, let's just follow up on that. At what point, from a bootstrap for e-commerce company, should it try to get seed funding or grow? I mean, once it's, what is the, for
Yeah.
e-commerce establishment of traction
Yeah, I'm
in general terms?
honestly, it's best for you to try and bootstrap it as long as you can without going bankrupt, right? And that's mostly because it's in your best interest to grow the value of your company before you start taking equity, before you start giving equity away. So try to push it and bootstrap it as long as you can. Now, I've looked at companies that have been online for like 4 to 6 months, and they've grown substantial traction in that time, and enough that okay, look, our sales have grown 15% consistently every single month, and this is the average basket size, and this is the percentage of recurring customers. So for angels, maybe like 4 to 6 months. Don't hold me on that. If you can make it a year bootstrapping and just grow the business, that's great. You know, I've seen companies that are making already 800,000. There's a guy in Saudi, it's not the market, but Saudi Arabia. He made $800,000 in the first 7 months of his business online. He's selling print, photos being printed on canvas and delivering it.
So you just upload your picture and
You upload your photo, you know
yeah.
that thing on mugs and all that.
Yeah.
It's
The simplest.
but he's the
Well, he
only
is,
guy
yeah.
in Saudi doing it,
Okay.
and the only e-commerce guy in Saudi doing it. So he actually
Yeah.
delivers. It takes like 5 days, but he does it, and he made $800,000
Incredible.
in nothing. Like that shocks me. So he doesn't need. He can bootstrap it for another year and just come in and get his first round of funding at $6 million, valuation, and he's doing great. So it really depends, but I would say 4 to 6 months is sufficient.
Great.
And how much long, sorry.
Well, last
We can talk
one.
later.
Promise.
All right.
Let's go ahead.
Yeah, no, and how, because you're saying 4 to 6 months, so how long is too long? Of
There's no such
bootstrapping,
thing as
so
too long.
there's no, so if you go
If you
for a
can-
year or 2 years,
Yeah, if you
and
can
then.
fund your company and you're not going bankrupt and you can feed everyone, then you're fine.
Okay.
If you don't ever have to raise money, don't raise money. Keep the equity, right? Or give a little bit of equity away to someone really strategic who can help you grow. But bootstrap as long as you can.
Okay. Well, I guess the last 2 questions. The gentleman over there.
You mentioned before, obviously, you don't invest in sort of,
I'm sorry?
you don't invest in ideas as such. So if a company or an entrepreneur has done a certain amount of, their due diligence and they're sort of creating their idea and building it as such, when does it get to the point where it's interesting for you as your business to invest in it? Like what needs to be done kind of at that point between where they're at and the next stage of getting investment?
So I said a little bit earlier, but I think some sort of like traction or proof of concept. Let's say if you have an e-commerce, you've opened up the site, you have people that are actually trying to buy your product. If you have a prototype and an actual hardware, tangible object, intent, right? Letters of intent from distributors that say if there's 200,000 of these, then we will stock them. And you go, look, I just need the funding to do the beta and to grow it, etc. For us, that kind of proof of concept, that traction, that's sufficient at that stage, right? So you just need that growth capital to either test the second part of your product, or I've already, I had friends that do, and I give this example because Wrap Up, the company that we had didn't have their beta test yet, right? But they had just developed it. But essentially, what they do is they record meetings, and then they can provide analytics on what they've recorded. So they can transcribe anything that was said verbally. They can tell you who was speaking, for how long, how positive they were, how efficient the meeting was, and all this stuff. But they were able to test it with 2 groups of friends because they had 2 advisors that happened to have a contact at Do and the other one at Emirates, and they tried it with a team of 10 people for 3 weeks. And we want to do our beta, and we have letters of intent to test from GE and from this and this if we develop it more. So this is what we.
Great. One last question before we open to networking. Yes.
So, adding to this point, so how does the e-commerce shape up in UAE? I heard it's kind of dating, it's not going, it's still the nascent market.
It is. It's a very nascent market, but like I said, there's a lot of money that's going to be pumped into it, and there's a lot of awareness. So when it comes to the investor space, people are excited for e-commerce, and they're looking for e-commerce startups and strong e-commerce entrepreneurs to back.
comparing to India or US or China, it's a very small market.
Yeah, there's nobody here. So it's maybe not the most exciting for the entrepreneur, but the opportunity, right? And you're able to get the funding. So let's say I'm doing e-commerce. There's one of the startups that's presenting on the 28th. So she's an Emirati female founder with an Indian partner, and they are able to open in the Indian market, which is really exciting for us, but equally open in the UAE, and it doesn't actually cost them that much to split both because the founders are split between two. That's crazy exciting because that one offers, like India offers all the scalability, and the UAE offers the trust on the investor side to back a startup that's based here, that's local here, that has laws that we can connect with. So
Great. Thank you, Alyssa. Thank
Yeah.
you very much for your time. We're going to open this up now to networking. Round of applause. So we have 8:30